5 years, will there be local news and newspapers and magazines in the same way that there is today?
5 years, I think yes. 20 or 30 years, probably not. I mean, it'll be very different if it is. I still think you're going to have local outlets, because I think there will be people who are going to want to know what's going on locally. But I do think the shift to digital is, I mean, it should be prehistoric at this point. Like to me, it's hard to believe that there are still a lot actually of stations who are they're making enough money, for instance, in TV, they make enough money on TV ads that they're still like kind of dragging their heels on the digital side of things. For instance, in my case, we wanted to move off grid. I pitched the idea of letting me be more remote, cover the entire state, do things online. Because the reason that I had to live in Seattle was because I was tied to a television set. Like I had to be within a certain radius of the signal and the engineers, really. I mean, there was this, hub in downtown Seattle, and they didn't want me to live too far away from that. But if we opened up the internet as a major source of our information dissemination, then there was no reason that I couldn't get in my Airstream and still be an environmental reporter and now cover the entire state, or who knows, start doing national stuff. Like there are plenty of options. And that just wasn't something that they were interested in. Now it's interesting because now I see everybody is like a YouTuber now in TV, because nobody's going into the studios anymore. They're all like wearing their, shorts from the waist down and like a tie on the waist up and like Skyping in for their reports, which is like exactly what I pitched last year, which seemed to be so alien to them. So it's funny how like necessity is the mother of all innovation, and they're all doing it now. I think it's going to go back to what it was eventually. But I think eventually that whole model is going to have to change, because I just don't see appointment television being something that people are going to continue engaging in. Like appointment meaning you have to sit down at 5 o'clock to watch it. I mean, the audiences are going towards like, they like to have a relation. They like to know who the person is. Like you have a podcast. They like to know Vance. They like to know, how Vance thinks about some things, and they want to know a little bit more about the topics that you're exploring. And I think most people, like when you watch a newscast, you might get crime first, a fire next, politics after that, health and human wellness, and it's all over the board. And I think more and more people are wanting to go an inch wide and a mile deep versus a mile wide and an inch deep. And
100%. As soon as we saw the weather come on, which so we're sitting there waiting, are the hospitals burning down? Is chaos breaking out in the streets? And as soon as they were like, and we're going to turn to Susan for the weather and the traffic over here. And we're like, who cares about the weather or the traffic right now? Like that's not, but their base, the group of people that are tuning in every time, the people that they're able to go to the car salesman and the furniture stores and say, we've got these audiences. They want to know what the weather is going to be like. They want to know if they can go outside tomorrow. And even though they're not using traffic, we thought it was the funniest thing in the world. They were reporting traffic because they had a slot for reporting traffic. Only all of the roads were green.
Right.
And so it's like that appointment style thinking.
Right.
It just doesn't match in the regular world.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. You have a traffic reporter. So what are you going to do with that person? Like put them on, I don't know, the hospital beat or something. I don't know. So they stay doing traffic because they know how to make the maps. But yeah, and the weather stuff has always been fascinating to me, because that's what sells. I mean, that's when people tune into their local news station when there's going to be a snowstorm or a tornado or something like that. So, there's always pressure there. Like if you want to talk about bias, I mean, that's the place where, you really want things to go south, because if people are scared about the weather, they will definitely tune in to watch your local newscast. But yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I've worked with some really great, just wonderful people with big hearts, and they're still there at my old station, like just trucking away and trying to do the best they can under these crazy circumstances. And I think like a lot of them are even seeing like what you and I are talking about. They may not speak publicly about it, but they see that there are changes that need to be made, and they see like where the audiences are going. And it's just, it's like moving a really heavy cargo ship. You're really trying to turn it in a direction that it's just not easily moved into. But it will have to eventually to survive, because they're just like, the newspapers got a head start in a lot of ways when people just stopped. Like the internet stopped people from buying newspapers. They're just, the physical newspaper went the way of the white buffalo. And so the newspapers like had no choice. They had to figure out how to use the internet. Well, TV stations, like TVs are still here. So they haven't had to feel the pressure that a newspaper has. So like, even though newspapers are still having a tough time, and especially now we're seeing like layoffs all over the country, I think in the long run, they've gotten a head start on trying to make things better. Whereas I think reckoning is going to come for TV, and they're going to have wasted a lot of time. Like they're barely, a lot of them even just now getting into YouTube, and that's been around since 2007. So, you know, or even earlier than that. So I don't know what it's going to totally look like, but yeah, I don't think it's going to look exactly the same. And I think probably there are going to be fewer people doing it. I think that trend of like fewer people doing more is going to continue becoming the thing. Like automation is not going away. And we have automated cameras in studios now. It's so funny. Like I remember when the automated studio camera was like the new thing, and they had to, so like they'd lay off like, you know, 4 engineers for one camera. And, you know, it was sad to see these guys go because they were like our friends, and they had, you know, I'm sure they've fallen upwards though and found much better jobs. But you know, I will never forget, like we would watch these cameras and they would just bash into each other like halfway through the newscast, because there's only so much, you know, they could try to pre-program and stuff. But if like one little code was out, you know, you're watching like it, you know, your buddy's like coming up, blah, blah, blah. And like, there's a camera that just like goes right in front of his face in front of the other camera, or like runs into the other one because, you know, and I remember everyone be like, see, this is why automation is not going to work. But eventually they worked out the kinks, and now the studio cameras, like they're here to stay. That no one's getting those jobs back. Another thing is like the teleprompter, the anchors run the teleprompters now. They run their own prompter. There's nobody sitting in a room that, usually, I should say, some places they might still have them, but yeah, the anchors press it. So then they're like, sometimes the anchors like gotta love them, but they want to do their makeup while you're starting your report, and they forget to run the prompter, and now it's like stuck at their thing, and now you're like, okay, so I have nothing in the prompter anymore. I'm totally like Will Ferrell in Anchorman.
Who writes all the stuff in the prompter? Is it the host that sits there and types out what they're going to say?
The producers usually write like the stuff that is in there for the anchors to read. Sometimes the anchors will get like assignments like, hey, can you write this block, and can you write that block, that story or this story? But the producers write a lot, and then the reporters write their own stuff. So like if like I always, you know, I would write the anchors intro to me and their tag out of me, and I would write everything that I did in between. And then you know, usually like that's it. The anchors get a few, the producers write the most, and then the reporter does their own thing. And that's why I like being a reporter. Like I started out as a producer, but I don't really like to nanny other people or like bug other people. I found that to be like part of my personality. I like to be left alone, and I like to leave you alone. So I like being a reporter better, because you just do your own thing. You focus on your own thing. You become your little mini expert, and then you just let everybody, if the whole world's crashing around you back at the newsroom, like you don't care. It's just, as long as your thing is fine, that's all you care about.
Does everybody covet the host job? Is everybody like looking and dreaming and scheming to get into that seat?
No. But I remember when I first started in TV as an intern in Tampa, there was an intern who came in and said, I want to be on TV. I want to be an anchor. And I was like, I think I want to be a producer. I don't even know why I said that. I think because I like the behind the scene thing. I like to put things together. And all I know is because I said I wanted to be a producer, I didn't say I wanted to be on TV, I got all the coolest jobs, because they looked at me and they were like, okay, this person's legit. Like that girl is getting coffee. The other one who was like, I want to be on TV, I want to be an anchor, like she's the coffee girl from here on out. And Allison is producing the show. And I got like so many, you know, insider just opportunities. I mean, I even remember being on the show that I was interning for, because the producers liked me enough, because I didn't come in saying I wanted to be on the show. If you came in and you said you wanted to be on the show, they had already typecast you as a prima donna narcissist, and you were never going to be able to do much. You were just running coffee. If you came in and said you actually wanted to work, then hey, all of a sudden now you get to be on TV. Like it was very odd how that worked. But the anchor position is like very different than the reporter position. So maybe at the beginning, people like you're in college and you're thinking lights, camera, fame, whatever, and that's what you want to do. those people get weeded out very early because the salaries are terrible. My first salary was $18,500. That's pre-tax.
What year?
And so like, I remember having an intern once in Knoxville, and I told her that, and she was like, I can't even pay for my nails on that. I'm like, no. And she was like, I'm going into PR. That was it. She was like, I'm done. I'm going into PR. So those people get weeded out very early. And so then you usually ended up with folks who were like, they really wanted the host job. Maybe they were narcissistic. I don't totally know. I mean, I know some that are like really awesome and not narcissists at all. And I know some people that are pretty terrible egomaniacs. I'm sure that's in any industry. But I think there's like the folks who they like to, I don't know, they like to kind of see like sort of big picture. They like to be a part of the total of the show. They like to do interviews. They like to oversee things, and they just have sort of more, it's like a different personality thing. And yeah, they do make more money, and people know them more. But like for me, I wasn't really interested in that because I like to see history. Like I wanted to be there for it. I wanted to see what the world was watching on their television set. I wanted to see it in person. And I didn't want to sit in a studio. Like, to me, that was very boring. And so, yeah, I think sometimes people look at it like, oh, you couldn't cut it as an anchor or a host or whatever, so you end up being a reporter. I think a lot of reporters, like, once you get to that level, like I said, you've been, weeded out by salary or like the toughness of the job or whatever else. There are people who just like really like being reporters, and there are people who really like being anchors, and they're like, oil and water. They're just very different types of people.
They're not fighting for the same thing.
Not usually, no.